has been a very busy start to the year for PC brands. In the span of 2 months, we have seen 6 new GPUs hit the market. Nvidia had to be typical Nvidia and release 4 of their own, but AMD held back and we now have 2 GPUs in the 9000 series range. The first of which is the Radeon RX 9070. Now this card is pretty special. After a few weeks of testing, I'm actually blown away that AMD made this GPU so power efficient, affordable, and I can confidently say powerful. The AMD Radeon 9070 is a powerful GPU that costs just as little as $549. This puts it in line with Nvidia's not so great RTX 5070. I say not so great because while I was testing out 2 RX 9070 GPUs, I was actually reviewing an RTX 5070 at the same time. I have that review up on the channel right now too, alongside another RX 9070 variant from ASUS. Be sure to check those out, I'll leave links below. This content however covers the Gigabyte AMD Radeon RX 9070 gaming OC model. It is also my first hands-on with the redesigned gaming OC range from the brand, and I kinda like the new look. Granted, it isn't the most overhauled on the planet, but it looks quite cool. I think the most striking factor of this GPU is the small size. While ASUS claims its Prime OC is small form factor, it is actually bigger than this gaming OC variant. This is a tiny GPU, no joke, it brings back memories of the good old 10 series days. In terms of the dimensions, the card is 288mm long, 132mm wide, and 56mm thick. It comes with 4 ports, 2 of them are HDMI 2.1b ports, and the other 2 are DisplayPort 2.1a ports. The card comes with 3584 shading units, 56 compute cores, 56 RT cores, 112 tensor cores, and 128 ROPs, guaranteed unlike the 50 series. It has a boost clock of 2590 MHz, 16GB of GDDR6 RAM, and a max TGP of 220 watts, although Gigabyte does recommend a 650 watt power supply for this card. The card includes a 256-bit memory bus with 20GB per second of bandwidth and a 2518 MHz memory clock. It makes use of 2 8-pin PCIe connectors. Plain and simple, no bending, no heat buildup, no fires, and no nonsense. In the box you get the GPU and a piece of paper. Don't expect anything fancy here, and I don't think it is needed. The card looks great. Gigabyte has added some new details around the shell. There's a sort of rugged outer shell design now that features what's meant to look like debris, or sort of like dirt particle funny looking things on the edges of the card. I especially like this new sliding plastic on the side of the card that let me slide the Gigabyte logo over some RGB LED light to light up the logo. If I didn't want the logo lit up, I just slid the plastic over to the other side. Could this be the first GPU with a moving part? I guess so. I turn off all the RGB when I play games anyway, so I don't really care. The WindForce cooling system includes 3 80mm fans, and the center fan spins in the opposite direction to help with cooling. Gigabyte has also added its new server-grade thermal conductive gel to this card. The gel is used on the 50 series too, and so far I've been overly impressed by the results. Apart from that, the card looks nice. I can't get over how small it is. It is actually quite cute looking. In comparison to my RTX 4080 Super, it looks like a toy version of a GPU. Quite crazy how tiny this thing is. I guess I'm just so used to dealing with these massive 50 series cards that I forgot what GPUs used to look like. Even AMD's previous generation cards were bigger than this, even less powerful at times. As for the technical stuff, this is an AMD Radeon RX 9070, and as such it comes with quite a substantial boost in performance, especially for this price tag. The card leverages FSR4, which is exclusive to these 9000 series models. FSR4 essentially automatically upgrades FSR 3.1 games to the new version and automatically kicks the feature into gear when you enable it. The launch lineup is limited, I won't lie. On my PC, I only had a few select games that benefit from FSR4, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, and Monster Hunter Wilds. Other supported games include loads of PlayStation ports like God of War and the Horizon and The Last of Us series, but Sony stopped sending me PC review codes to test because I refuse to be a shill for the brand, so I'll buy those games for the next XT GPU review I have coming up soon. FSR4 is then activated by enabling it in 2 ways. I could turn on HyperRX in the AMD Adrenalin software or manually enable it across supported games in the same app. If the game supports it, the toggle would appear as Super Resolution 4. However, it is easier just to keep HyperRX enabled because everything just seems to happen automatically. I just had to make sure I select FSR 3.1 in some games so the Adrenalin software can enable FSR4. AMD has also changed its software while I'm on the topic. The new overlay menu is intuitive and lets you start a recording, take a screenshot, check your performance metrics and more. I actually really enjoyed using the software. I could also tweak the many various settings in the overlay, including FSR4 to see if it was enabled in the game, adjust the sharpness of FSR4, add a game filter and whatever else. I think the new overlay is a much needed revamp and people are gonna love it. I ran some tests across FSR4 games, some FSR3 games and some games with all the AI stuff disabled. I also ran synthetic benchmarks across 3D Mark because it was the best reference to compare GPUs. Given I had the RTX 5070, I also compared some of those scores wherever possible. I didn't change much on my build. It includes the AMD Ryzen 9900X, 64GB of DDR5 RAM, X870 Aorus Wi-Fi 7 motherboard, the Aorus Waterforce X2 360 cooler, Gigabyte AMD Radeon 97 Gaming OC, and the Gigabyte Aorus C700 glass case. I did use GPU Tweak 3 to increase the power limit of the GPU by 10%. I also turned my cooler PC fans to performance mode. You know, I just set up the scene as I usually do for daily gaming. Cyberpunk 2077 didn't have FSR4, so I went with the best possible comparison here. The RX 9070 ran FSR3 on balance with path ray tracing enabled. The closest setting I could get on the RTX 50 would be to enable multi-frame gen ×4, and even then the card didn't reach the same performance. However, I do need to note that the FSR3 in this case is quite an eyesore in comparison to multi-frame gen. The result is just very blurry and noisy. It just goes to show you how advanced FSR4 is when it comes to cleaning up the visuals. I was also impressed with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, as it is a great example of FSR4 tech in play. I ran through a busy boss fight and I was incredibly surprised how clean this whole section looked while making use of FSR4 and all the frame gen nonsense. Usually FSR4 would result in a very dirty image with lots of particle effects and noise all around the place. The Gigabyte Radeon RX 97 handled its cooling very well. During a stress test, the card peaked at 62 degrees Celsius and didn't go over it. The power draw was maxing out at 245 watts, with the fans revving up to 1800 RPM. This fan speed is a little higher than usual, but I do think it has to do with the smaller design of the card and the lack of heat spread area. The GPU clock then peaked at 2550 MHz. In terms of the fan noise, even at 1800 RPM, I barely heard the fans at all. There was no noticeable whine or hum. These fans are dead silent even when they need to work overtime. Again, much of this is attributed to the new thermal solution gel Gigabyte uses on these GPUs. We then have the FSR4 technology. It was actually quite impressive. The visuals are significantly cleaner compared to FSR3. There's no visible blurring around moving objects, particle effects finally resemble their intended appearance, and the overall level of quality surpassed my expectation. The technology also delivers exceptional performance. 4K games were handled very well on this Radeon 970. While ray tracing does encounter some minor issues, it generally outperforms the RTX 5070. This was an unexpected outcome, especially considering the card's price. The most significant achievement here is AMD's leap from FSR3 to FSR4. We now have improved visuals and remarkable performance. Although there's no multi-frame generation, the card doesn't require it. FSR4 already handles this aspect quite efficiently. When comparing tests like Monster Hunter and Ratchet & Clank, the frames are achieved on this 9070, and on certain tests, the performance is even higher than the RTX 5070. However, we must consider the price and performance of this card. It is truly remarkable that this GPU can be purchased for just $549. I had my reservations, but AMD has delivered a product that might be difficult to resist if you're looking for a 4K gaming card on a budget. Last generation, 4K gaming on a budget resulted in an expensive card with subpar FSR visuals and performance. This generation, it's the complete opposite. Of course, we need to acknowledge that FSR4 is new and the games are very limited in availability. However, like DLSS 3, we can expect a gradual expansion of supported games over time. The Gigabyte AMD Radeon RX 9070 Gaming OC is really an excellent GPU. It is so small but mighty. Again, I have to mention how small this card is because it needs to be said, it is incredibly small. Yet the performance it delivers is on par with other Radeon RX 9070s and beats the RTX 5070. I think Gigabyte has a real winner on its hands here. I know Gigabyte fans enjoy the AMD variants, and you can't go wrong here. The 9070 is fantastic value, but it does make it hard to decide between spending the extra $50 or just throwing money at this card. Either way, you're getting a good card here that will only get better as more games arrive with FSR4 support. So those are my thoughts on this Gigabyte AMD Radeon RX 9070 gaming OC GPU. Are you picking this card up? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to check out the channel as I have loads of other GPU reviews that are going up at the same time as this content today. While you're here, also do consider subscribing for future content like this and visit glitch.online daily for all your gaming and tech everything. Until next time, farewell.